first of all, I want to thank all of you to make part of one more day of celebration of 30 years of CBKF. We start our celebration in November, and every month we have been trying to introduce interesting and relevant talks in the field of biotechnology. And today we are celebrating one more time, and I'll be just brief because I want to thank you a lot to Raphaella Gomes from Raizen, and say that is for us a pleasure in our research centers, CBKF, to have you today as speaker. And I hope next time you can visit us and we can have a true talk face to face. And thank you so much for being. I know that we are really busy, and we want CBKF as a representative of CBKF to thank you for this pleasure and this moment that is really relevant for our knowledge and our specifically our innovation in our research center. So thank you so much. And now, Raquel, please, just is your time.
I would like to thank, on behalf of the Fermentation Solutions Group, the presence of Raphaella Gomes. It is a great pleasure to see you and have you here to talk with us. Dr. Raphaella has a law degree from Fluminense Federal University in Rio de Janeiro, and started her career at Shell Brazil in the corporate legal area in 2003. She is currently the CEO of Raizen Biomass and member of the boards of the renewable business companies of Raizen. Let me see if I say this correctly. Iogan Energy Corporation of Raizen Biogas SCA. She is also vice president of the Brazilian Bioinnovation Association and member of the board of the Brazilian Biogas Association. Her job is to develop renewable energy business and products, supporting the energy transitions and creating low carbon solutions. She revealed to us that she's totally passionate about what she does, that is the energy transition and migration to a low carbon circular economy. And her ambition is to support this transition, making the world a better place for future generations. Raphaella, are you ready to present your talk to us? We are really anxious to hear you.
Thank you so much, Raquel, and also thank you, Manuela, for the very kind words. I am an enthusiast of energy transition and what I do. So for me, it's a huge pleasure, not only to be able to do something that I'm deeply passionate about, but also to be here with you. I want to thank Universidade Católica for the invitation, and also Professor Manuela. I'm not an engineer, and I'm not a scientist. I'm a reformed lawyer converted into a business person, but I hope that I can share with you a little bit of what we're seeing in terms of biotech and biotech applications in the global energy transition going forward. This field, what you do, and all the work around biotechnology and fermentation, for me, is a crucial path to making the most out of the existing resources of the world. And it makes a lot of sense for me to be here again. Is a huge pleasure. So I'm going to, if technology helps, I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully it will all go well. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
yes,
very good. So as I mentioned, I want to talk to you about the role of advanced biofuels in global energy transition. But first, I want to talk little bit more about Raízen and what we do. We are, let me see what I can, okay. So we are one of the world's largest biofuel players and basically a renewable energy company. We are a very young company. We were created per se in 2011. We are reaching out our 10-year anniversary, but we were born big because we were born as a result of the merger of Shell in Brazil and a big Brazilian sugar and ethanol producer called Cosan. We are the fourth largest company in Brazil, and our portfolio is mainly and mostly around renewables. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. We also are the world's largest sugar producer. We have a production that it's around 4.5 million tons of sugar every year. And we also have marketing and services and a proximity retail business. So we say that we are from farm to the consumer, providing energy and goods and services to meet our clients' demands. So a little deep dive on the renewable energy portfolio. As I mentioned, we are an integrated renewable energy company. So we have currently, after our latest acquisition, 35 mills that produce sugarcane and sugar and ethanol. And we have a crushing capacity around 100 million tons of sugarcane each year. We are the world's largest sugarcane company in aggregate. We manage around 1.3 million hectares of land, which is a lot of land. And I think those numbers are only possible in a country like Brazil. And we, as I mentioned, we are the world's largest sugar producer, but we're also the world's largest sugarcane ethanol producer. We produce almost now 4 billion liters of ethanol every year. And that is first generation ethanol, but there is biotech in there because fermentation. But we also have a program to produce advanced biofuels using sugarcane bagasse as the feedstock. Sugarcane bagasse is basically what is left after you crush the sugarcane and is cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. And our E2G platform breaks down the cellulose to find the sugars inside the cellulose so that we are able to ferment them. I'm going to also, there's another slide about it, but it enables us to produce almost 50% more ethanol. So in theory, if we already produce 4 billion liters of ethanol, we could produce another 2 billion liters using E2G. We also have a huge bioelectricity park where we burn the bagasse to produce thermal electricity. We have 1.3 gigawatts of installed capacity, and we export around 3.5 terawatts of energy each year, which is enough to supply energy for a city the size of Rio de Janeiro here in Brazil, which is quite big. And we also have a biogas platform that I also want to talk a little bit more about in a couple of minutes. And a pellet business, which is basically a way to transport sugarcane biomass and use it to replace coal in thermal power generations. We've done a couple of exports to European companies, mainly in the UK and the Netherlands. And it's a good alternative to replace coal, maintaining the base load for the power energy matrix and helping compensate for the intermittent solar and wind power sources that are coming in very rapidly to the power matrix globally. So moving forward and going into a little bit more detail about our E2G program, we have the first plant that we built was here in Brazil, co-located to one of our mills. And it is a plant with the 40 million liter capacity. And it was the result of many, many years of research and development and demonstration. So when Raízen was created, Shell contributed all the research that they had done on this platform to Raízen. And we also have a company in Canada, which has a demo plant where we tested the technology. And then in 2012, we felt that we were ready to go and build a commercial scale plant. This is very interesting because we are currently one of the only companies in the world that managed to successfully continue to operate continuously at a commercial scale. We know that 10 years ago, there was a huge hype around advanced biofuels, but for different reasons, many companies dropped the projects. And we are happy to say that we managed to breach all of the operational hurdles, and we are now operating at continuous scale, and we feel that the technology is already proven, and we are ready to move on and scale up, building bigger plants and new plants for this product. We have already produced more than 100 million liters of cellulosic ethanol. So basically how it works is you take the sugarcane bagasse, but you also use tops and leaves. It goes through a pre-treatment, and then there is which is our pre-treatment is acid hydrolysis. And then we also have an enzymatic treatment and then fermentation of two separate carbon streams. One is C6, which is fairly similar to what we already do in the first generation fermentation. Then it just goes through the normal fermentation for the 1G sugars. And then we have the C5 fermentation, where we use genetically modified GMO, a yeast that ferments the C5 sugars, and then it goes to normal distillation process. I'm very self-aware here because, again, I'm not a scientist and I'm talking to scientists. So in general terms and very broad terms, that's the way our technology works. I think one of the main things that we did, I think, in order to make this work where others couldn't, it has to do basically with biomass handling and storage. And since we have this huge industrial operation on sugarcane, we understand the feedstock very well. And I think we were able to put that knowledge into the advanced biofuels project to make it viable. So moving ahead, and this is just, I wanted to talk a little bit about ethanol in general as a decarbonization alternative. I know there is huge hype around electrification and electric vehicles, but what I always like to say is that electric vehicles, they are only as clean as the energy matrix, power matrix that they are plugged into. So even in countries where the power matrix is very clean and renewable, such as Brazil, we have 80% of our power energy comes from renewable source, mainly because we have huge hydro platform, biomass. Hydro represents 60%, biomass represents around 10%, and then you have solar and the other renewables also starting to pick up. So we have in the power matrix an 80% renewable energy matrix. But even if you look at our country, when you compare the emissions of a pure EV and a vehicle running 100% on ethanol, you see that the vehicle running 100% on ethanol is still more efficient in terms of CO2 emissions. And this is well to wheel, so the full life cycle, it includes everything. And this is basically because of the fact that when the sugar cane is growing up, it's already capturing the CO2, and then the CO2 that comes out is renewable cycle. And this is very important because Brazil has already a huge success case in terms of implementing using ethanol in the car fleet. Almost, I think, more than 70% of our car fleet is currently flex fuel, which means that the consumer at the gas station has the option to either fill in the car with ethanol or gasoline. But when he does decide to fill the car with ethanol instead of gasoline, is actually reducing 80% of the CO2 emissions, as I mentioned in the chart on the previous slide. And this was done over the last 30 years. I always say that my car is made in the UK, and it is a flex car. So the technology is already there, it exists, it's just a matter of implementing it. And it's a drop-in solution. You don't need to change or make adjustments to the power matrix. And this is the reason why Brazil's total energy matrix is actually 50% renewable. It is because of the power matrix being very clean, but also because of the use of ethanol in the fleet, and also biodiesel and other biofuels that are mixed into the fossil fuels. So this is an example of something that it's available, you can implement it quickly, and it should help as part of this journey in the energy transition and decarbonization. Of course, it's not the sole solution, but it definitely can be one very powerful quick solution to be deployed. Moving on, I also wanted to talk to you about biogas, which is something very interesting. Waste to energy is also a very hot topic in terms of decarbonization. In our case, we have a biogas portfolio. We have one of the largest biogas plants in the world, 21 megawatts of installed capacity, and it uses vinasse and filter cake to produce biogas that can then be either burned and turned into power or purified and turned into renewable CH4. And this is also very interesting because renewable CH4 is CH4, which is methane. And it's, again, a drop-in solution. You can replace it by fossil methane, LPG, even diesel in the heavy transport fleet, which is one of those hard to abate sectors that everyone is looking at very careful at this point. And the best part of it is that when you do the biodigestion of the vinasse and the filter cake, you're actually doing a pre-compost, and the residues, they go back to the fields as organic fertilizers. So you're only borrowing the volatile material that is in that residue, and the fertilizing content is still all there. So you're kind of making it better to go to the field, and you're still using it as a fertilizer. So it's a full, complete process. In our case, we have, this is another thing I always say, because in order to produce ethanol, you produce 1 liter of ethanol, you produce around 12 liters of vinasse. So there is a lot of vinasse. And if we produce 4 billion liters of ethanol each year, we're in theory producing 50 billion liters of vinasse. So when I say what we produce more is vinasse. So it's basically water and organic content. So this has a huge potential of scaling up and using this feedstock. Here are some numbers. Brazil, this is the Brazilian potential for biogas production. So the production, if we used all of the waste from agriculture and city waste and sugarcane residues, we would be able to produce almost 130 million cubic meters of methane per day. And this is more than all the gas that is currently being produced, consumed in Brazil. And sugarcane residues represent 40% of that potential because of the scale. So there is a huge potential here to increase and tap into this energy reserve, green energy reserve, to use it not only to substitute natural gas and diesel, as I mentioned before, but also as a drop-in renewable source to produce green hydrogen, green ammonia, e-methanol, and other energy sources. When you look into biomethane versus natural gas, it's almost more than 90% reduction in CO2. And when you compare it to diesel, it's huge, the difference between the emissions on CO2. And this leads me to what we are looking as a concept. So we believe that the mills of the past are going to be the biorefineries of the future, where actually one waste stream of one project will be the feedstock for the next product. So for example, when you produce sugar and ethanol, you have vinasse and bagasse. Vinasse can be destinated to biogas for the production of renewable electricity, or biomethane to replace diesel, natural gas, and other sources. And the second generation ethanol that is produced using the bagasse from the 1G also produces vinasse that can be then again put into the biogas to produce biomethane. And biogas can actually give steam, electricity, and other energy power to the other plants. So thus creating this integrated circular economy concept where you leave nothing to waste. You're Portuguese, so you will fully understand what I'm saying. The analogy that we make is with the pork. So when you have the pork, you kind of use everything. Nothing is left. So it's fully utilized. So this is the same concept here. Leave no waste. Of course, there is still a journey because you can turn these carbon sources into other highly added value products such as biochemicals, bioplastics, biomaterials. So there is still a journey that we're pursuing to make this even more complete biorefinery, and biotech will have a core role in this journey. So what we're saying at the end of the day is, how can we take these renewable carbon sources that we have in huge quantity, put it to the best applications possible, and use everything about it, and also help in this energy transition journey. And finally, I have to talk about Brazil. I am Brazilian, very proud of my country. And I think that Brazil has this huge role that it could play in the global energy transition, not only as an agricultural feedstock biomass supplier, but as a place to test these new technologies, to scale them up, and even a place to produce these new technologies and export them to the world, because we have huge biomass potential. We have one of the biggest biodiversities. We have a lot of really good people here working on bioinnovation. We know we're the best at farming technology. Therefore, we can be the leading case for renewable energy matrix. So that was it. That was my presentation. Thank you all for listening, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you for your interesting presentation, Raphaella. We now have time for some questions. I'm going to see if I have here. Maybe the audience wants to raise the hands.
I think we got some raised hands.
Yeah. No, no, he's not here. Ah, Manuela, yes.
I think we have Catarina Pacheco first, I think.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Catarina, please.
I think she's on mute.
Yeah. Okay, it's good. No. Catarina, can you speak? Catarina? Are you there?
No, maybe.
Yeah, maybe I can start and then Catarina. So thank you so much for your excellent presentation. I think this is perspective of circular economy in a real world, because today we do a lot of research and we are still growing in this field, but when you see that a lot of things are already implemented, it's really great. When I saw your diagram, the last one, where you saw how can we do this concept of biorefinery, we have, at least we have been discussing with some groups in Portugal about economics. No, economics for circular economy is a problem when you think about limits of amounts of byproducts. Where are you starting being profitable or not? And specifically, there is also another problem, that is transport and logistic of these byproducts. Assuming that we have a good part of Brazil of these opportunities of ethanol and so on, but you also have long distance. No, what is your strategy in order to assuming this profitability in terms of concentrating? Are you collecting all this biomass, or because some of them is so distant that you decide just to not valorize? What are you doing with this problem at the moment?
It's actually a really good question. We do have, I would say, an advantage, because we are doing the biofuels plants connected to our own plants. Mm-hmm. So the biomass in theory is already there. Mm-hmm. Of course, we collect and we acquire and we try to manage biomass to optimize the biomass from the surroundings. But biomass itself, unless you're talking about the pellets that, as I mentioned before, it doesn't travel well in the terms of economics. So it is either when we're talking about E2G, either you're buying the final product, the second generation ethanol. One thing I should have mentioned, but we export a lot of ethanol in general. We are one of the main trading companies in the US of sugarcane ethanol. In Asia, we also have a very strong position. We export a lot of our products to Japan and other countries. So you have that opportunity to buy the finished products. Most of our E2G is going through Europe at this moment. So we are seeing European companies buying that product. The other alternative is to set up the plants where you actually have the biomass. So Portugal, I'm not an expert, but I know has huge foresting. So you, in theory, you could set up a plant next to a place where you have biomass from forestry or from other crops and produce it locally. So what we are talking now with some countries such as India and Thailand is they want to import the technology so that it can produce the product locally. So I think those are the two main things, the two main routes that I would say they are more efficient and make sense.
Thank you. Maybe now we have. Can you see that?
I'm trying to solve the question of allowing to talk. This is my first time here. I don't know if Maria can help me here.
Yes, I can.
Is there any way to allow to talk the audience to make the questions?
I'm working. Don't worry, Raquel.
Okay.
I'm working on that. I'm alert to those questions. Now we have there João Pereira. He's asking something. If you don't want, if you want.
Okay, I saw. I already. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So João Pereira is asking that he's saying that there is a potential for this technology to contribute for a carbon negative economy, at least in this restricted part of the circle in the circular economy. How does land use and land conversion contribute to the footprint of your products?
It's a very good question. So when we analyze our emissions, we always are talking about the full circle. So that includes land use and the actual fabrication and planting and harvesting of the products. E2G is very good in that sense because you're not adding land. You're basically using the same land, so there is no land conversion to produce additional products. And even in the sugarcane, traditional first generation ethanol, there is a huge potential to be tapped still in productivity of the crop itself, so that you don't need to go and find new land for your products. So if you look at our portfolio throughout the years, our land use didn't increase organically. We had an increase this year because we actually bought another company that had operations, so we're increasing in that sense, but there is no actual increase because of those two things. You can use the residues to produce more product, and you can also increase the productivity of the sugarcane as a crop in the same area, in the same field. Some of the things we're also looking into is carbon sequestration in the soil, for example. So better or more innovative ways of doing our agricultural processes that will allow for the plant to actually sequester more CO2 in the soil. So there are several companies around the world looking into this, but it's also another way to, again, with the same land, same natural resources, you produce more without having to increase your land's usage. So I don't know if I answered the question, but.
Thank you. I have some generalist question for you. It's more related with how do you see Brazil embracing this mission? I know that your company is engaged with this. Do you see that you have other companies that are also engaged with this mission? Because you have all the conditions, all the natural conditions, all the resources already established to go forward on this, and Brazil is so big that can make the other countries also do the same thing and follow Brazil. What's your opinion about this?
Yes, I appreciate the question, Raquel. When you read my bio, you saw that I am the vice chairwoman of ABBI, and ABBI is the Brazilian Association for Bioinnovation. And we had a board meeting this morning, and we were actually discussing how can we create a country level plan to use bio-innovation and biotechnology to grow this, to tap on the existing potential, which is, you mentioned very well, and how can we make this, how can we make Brazil global reference for bio-innovation. And I think there's a lot of work to be done, but there are a lot of good people here that are willing to put in the work. So we have, as you well know, universities that are international references for agriculture, even for biotech. We have Unicamp. So we have a lot of intellectual know-how. We have local Brazilian companies that are very invested in this agenda. Raízen is one of them, but Brazil has several big multinational Brazilian companies that are originally from Brazil, but are now all over the world. And I think there is a momentum. I mentioned this in the beginning of my presentation, but I think the world, I have a lot of friends who work with SEG for a very long time now, and impact investments and all those things. So they were talking about this 10 years ago. We were talking about energy transition many, many years ago, and people thought kind of, oh, here come these guys talking about these things that doesn't make sense. But now everyone is waking up to this agenda. So there is also a lot of momentum. And I think that we need to organize the private companies, the universities, the startups, because we already have also a very nice startup environment in Brazil starting to pick up, and the government to create a plan for the country so that we can fulfill that potential. That is not just the potential, but is an actual, we can actually deliver on that.
Okay, let me see. I have here.
It's definitely not going to be easy, because we have a country that has continental size. It has a continental size, so we have many different Brazils inside Brazil.
Yes.
So it's not going to be a simple task, but I do think we have a lot of good people here looking into that and working on that.
Thank you. I have here that João Pereira that made the first question for you. He thanks you for he's thanking you for your answer, and he is also making here another question related with the soil exhaustion and erosion. What about soil exhaustion and erosion? If he understood correctly, the productivity does not degrade even in the long term. Is there net soil fixation? Or on another point, do you see pyrolysis being a practical route for biomass like bagasse to produce carbon-rich fuels?
Okay, so João, thank you very much. I'm gonna do a small disclaimer. I'm not an agronomer and I'm not a chemical engineer, but I'm going to try to answer both of your questions. On the first one, I think yes, the answer is the increase in productivity does not create soil degradation. And I think, again, disclaimer, that the net soil fixation, there is a net soil fixation, but I want to apologize to you because I don't have all the data here, and I can definitely share that with Raquel or Manuela if they want to after. But in general terms, yes. And the second question, pyrolysis for me is something that we've looked into it so many different times over the years, and I never seen a project where the economics made sense. So I am still open to every time someone comes in with a new pyrolysis discussion, we look into it because we want to keep an open mind about the new technologies. But up to date, I never saw a project that actually made economical sense. And of course, we have to compare it with other technologies. So again, I think it makes sense in theory, but when we analyze it in a practical way, it doesn't seem to be deployable at scale and commercially.
Maybe because of like temperatures used, energy consumption.
Exactly, because you're basically using energy to burn the biomass, and then you're going to still have to do all the processes. That's exactly it. The energy consumption is so high, it doesn't make economical sense.
Sometimes it happens that when we optimize a process, lab scale or maybe pilot, but then when you go to industrial, it doesn't work economically for you. Mariana Mandu is also asking, in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges associated with the production of the second generation bioethanol?
Very good questions. Only good questions here today. I think the main challenges are some of the things we already kind of tackled in our discussion here. Access to biomass and biomass management is an important part of it. In our case, like I said, we're privileged to have abundant biomass. And also, how are the governments keep on looking into this decarbonization and recognizing the attributes of this renewable source? I think it's a little bit, again, my opinion, there is a tendency of people to oversimplify the solutions and adopt a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. And I don't think that's possible when you're talking about energy transition. So a question I always get from different people is, how does electrification plays in this scenario? And my answer is always electrification is a very important trend, and I think it's going to happen, and it's going to be a solution to many different problems. But one is not going to be a solution for everyone and everywhere in the world. This is something that we need to understand, again, from well to wheel. And on the other hand, ethanol can be a very good source to produce green hydrogen using reforming. So either way, it makes sense that this advanced biofuels platform continues to be developed and deployed, because it will have a role either directly used as a product for combustion engines, or if we go to electrification and hydrogen fuel cells, then it can be a source for hydrogen fuel cells, because you don't have to transport hydrogen around. You just need to transport ethanol, and you do the reforming either at the gas station or within the car itself. So there are several companies that are studying the ethanol fuel cell. Nissan is one of them, but there are others. And you don't have to transport and distributing. Again, transporting hydrogen is expensive and is potentially dangerous. So you could use ethanol as a liquid battery. But I think the challenge is to make people understand that, and not coming from a pure Eurocentric view of the world, and recognizing that there might be products and technologies throughout the world that can help with the solution. So that's my take on that.
Thank you. I have here another question for you from Marcos Santos. Is there any research in Brazil for the production of bio-LPG or biopropane? If you know something.
I particularly never got into that, but I know there are some researchers in that area. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't looked at it, especially because when we talk about LPG, it can be easily replaced by methane, mm-hmm. which we already think that we have a product that can replace LPG, which is the biomethane coming from the biogas. But yes, I know there are some, but we haven't looked into it.
Okay, thank you. I have one question for you, Raphaella. How much time, in your opinion, how much time you estimate to achieve the total conversion from fossil fuel to biofuel? This is a very difficult question. Do you think we're still going to assist to a mixture of both, or a total conversion? What's your opinion?
It depends on, first, globally. Yes. Brazil, well, I think globally it's still going to be a while. But going back to our own experience, if you look at the car fleet, at the light fleet, mm-hmm. Brazil already has 70% flex fuel cars. So in theory, it's a very quick and easy thing to do. On the heavy transport sector, it's going to be a little bit harder. Aviation is going to take a while, but we are seeing very interesting developments on sustainable aviation fuels coming from sugar or ethanol or other biological sources. Again, biotech playing a very important role on that. Bunker, also very interesting things. Not only green ammonia for ships, but also lignin, ethanol, oil, which is a very interesting take for bunker substitutes for shipping. So I think we have several initiatives globally, but they are going to take time. If you think about just the sheer volume of products required. Yes. So I would say we are going to see a lot of acceleration in the next, especially when you look at the US with the Biden administration, February 19, mm-hmm. the rejoining the Paris Agreement and everything they have announced. So I think we're going to see a lot of money being poured into the development of new technologies, which is going to help accelerate that. But it's just a huge undertaking. Fossils, they do represent everything. We don't even understand how much of our daily lives they are responsible for. So the chair I'm sitting in is plastic, so it's fossil. My pencil, my computer, my everything that I'm using here to talk to you guys comes from a fossil
Yes.
source. So we need to change the way that we do things.
Yes.
Completely. So I think that's going to take some time, but I'm very optimistic that the pace is going to be very accelerated from now on.
Yes. I just have, if we have time only for a last question, and I have here Luis Alcalá making the same question that I have for you. So he's saying thank you for the presentation, and also he's asking what are the future technological challenges that rise and expect to find, and how can we researchers help? What is the importance of the research centers, like, for example, ours, that are dedicated with research projects to the development of strategies to recover wastes and transform in something valuable? What is the importance of our work for a mission like this? And how can we help more?
Well, that's the best question to end the discussion with. I would say that the next frontier is going to be biochemicals and bioplastics. So there is a lot of good work done on that around the world, but again, scalability, when you put the economics down, so it's still, and this is an area where different than what we're saying, ethanol versus gasoline or biomethane versus diesel, there are several different applications and products that come out of this chemistry industry that are used in everything that we consume, from beauty products to solvents to household cleaning products to paints to the glue that goes inside things. So for me, that is from packaging. For me, that is the next frontier. So what are the solutions for all of those other things? And also something that some companies, some research centers in the US are already doing, and some companies are already doing, which is mapping fully grasping the genome of this bacteria or of these biological organisms and yeasts that will help us understand how to produce the next generation of products. So I will give you one example, biogas one. We are with biogas production 100 years ago, when I compare it to ethanol production. So when I do ethanol, 1G ethanol fermentation, you know this better than I do. You know everything, the inputs, the outputs, the organism, everything is controlled. You know, you can tailor it to several different degrees. But with biogas, we know that there are microorganisms there that produce biogas when they consume these organic materials. And because there are so many, it's different from ethanol fermentation. We don't have a detailed understanding on how that works and how can we improve that. So we're still, I like to say that it's an artisanal work, even though there is already a lot of technology included. But when you look into the biology part of it and the microorganism and what they do and how they do what they do, there's still a huge field to be studied and understand. So I think that's it. I think biotech and pharma, and we're seeing all of those other things also here. So there's still a lot of things that can be done. We kind of in Brazil, we have an expression, we cutted the tall grass. So advanced biofuels, tall grass. So we cutted the tall grass. Now we need to dig deeper and look into this all other things. And it's amazing, and it's a good place to be.
Thank you, Raphaella. I don't know if we have more time for a question. We have here a last question from João Pereira. Is asking, in terms of environmental sustainability, how does a big company compensate for the massive decrease in biodiversity in lands occupied? And the social sustainability also, how do you balance things such as automation, unemployment, modernization, and low education demographic? This is a...
These are all very important questions that we ask ourselves every day. So I think a couple of good news. I think that 10 years ago, the sugar and ethanol sector used to burn the sugar cane to be able to harvest it, because it was basically manual harvesting. And the sugarcane tops and leaves there, they can cut you if you go into a sugarcane field, if you have the opportunity to go into one. So it was basically impossible to do manual harvesting without burning the cane. But Brazil passed on very severe laws, especially in the state of São Paulo. And our company was one of the first companies to stop burning sugarcane 10 years ago, even before the law obligated us. So it was a voluntary thing that we did to kind of bring the whole sector with us. Of course, that in order to do that, we needed to mechanize most of our operations, which is your second question. So you kind of there, you're already seeing the trade-off between environmental and how do you make sure that the people that are on your operations, they continue to be able to stay there and do other things. And the non-burning sugarcane actually made the biodiversity come back to the fields, which is amazing. So the animals started to come back and all of those things, which was not only because you're not sending CO2 into the atmosphere, but you're also recomposing that wildlife that was in there. On the part of the people, what we did was we tried to make sure that those people have education and training, not only to become the new operators of this new way of producing, but also could indeed go and do other different things that the education would allow them to do. We have a foundation at Raízem, is a nonprofit foundation, and it's basically aims to provide education, and it goes from the school level until the person is actually graduated and has a craft, is able to have a craft, because this is something we believe. So we do a lot of that work on the outskirts of our operations mills. Another thing is important to understand is sometimes the city is based around the mill, so you kind of have that population there that relies a lot on what we do. So the foundation is one way to do it, and I think in terms of the environment, the land occupation, as I mentioned, I'm just reading your question again, just make sure I don't forget to answer. And regarding to the biodiversity, as I mentioned before, there is no new land coming in, and our goal is to increase productivity in the existing land. The other thing is very important for you to understand that normally when we talk to Europeans, they don't have this knowledge, is that in the state of São Paulo, there is a very strict regulation that all of the companies that have farms, they need to dedicate 20% of the land in each farm to maintain and preserve the vegetation that's there. And if you're buying land that doesn't have that, you need to redo that before you can actually do the plant and harvest the land. That's in São Paulo. As close as you go to the Amazon, which is very far away from where our operations are, that number goes from 20% mandatory reserve to 80% mandatory reserve. So you can only use 20% of your land. And that actually means that every agricultural in São Paulo doesn't own 100% of his land. It does own, but he can only use 80%. He needs to preserve the rest. And that leads, and I'm not going to, the discussions on the media, but if you look at the numbers, you see that Brazil is actually one of the countries that has a higher percentage of its territory in either natural preservation, parks, forests, and agricultural preservation is a huge part of it because of those legal obligations that we need to comply with.
Thank you, Raphaella. I think we can finish the questions from my side before giving the word to Professor Manuela. From my side, I would like to thank you for your presence and for the audience questions and presence. Professor Manuela, maybe you can finish the session, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think when you think about our biotech school and also our research center for biotechnologies is really important to think about these aspects of sustainability, circular economy. So I think although we are not working so much in terms of energy directly, I think we need to think that this is integrated, and we need to think always in these multidisciplinary solutions, I'd say, in order to get maximum value. So I think today you brought us different solutions, and also thinking that the future is in fact this circular economy, and that we already have Ryzen working in the wall with such success that I believe that much other industries will be following them. So I think we want to thank you again for leaving this message to Portugal, and also that we are always in Portugal prone to collaborate with Ryzen. So we have our research center, but other research centers, I suppose, they are also attending to the meeting today, and will be always a pleasure to collaborate with you. Thank you so much, Raphaella, for taking your time to be with us. Thank you.
I really appreciate it, Manuela. As you know, Portugal is in my heart. I grew up in Porto. Even though I seem like very Brazilian now, my heart is in Portugal. My dad is Portuguese. I grew up in Porto. So anytime you want me to come here, it's a huge pleasure.
Okay.
Just to connect with you.
Yeah, we could feel some Portuguese. I know, I'm joking. Yeah, but that's great. So we are, of course, we'll be really happy to receive you any day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, I think, all the participants. I think we had a great discussion today. and we take some messages home. So, and these are really is really important for the country and for our economy too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And feel free, all the participants. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out, send a note, send a question that I didn't have the chance to answer. It's also a pleasure. So thank you for the great questions.